someone asks you a question, do you have the, I don't know, the right or the responsibility to say you're not?
Yeah. Still ambiguous because as I was saying, the other sentences, the point was so clear. If I have information and you have come to me, especially one-on-one or privately or intimately, in an intimate way, and have asked something, doesn't matter what, but have asked something, I have a responsibility to respond to you. I have a responsibility to try at my very best to measure your receptivity, your ability to appreciate. I mean, the dictionary definition, those made clear, made understood properly, to appreciate and comprehend and be able to handle the answer to the information. So to the best of my abilities, have those measurements of you are in fact ready, I have the knowledge that I have the answer to the question you're asking, and that I have a responsibility to answer you. I think people have a responsibility with information to share any form of information with anybody when it's suitable. So in that capacity, I then have to decide, as this is ongoing, as how and what I can portray, show, tell. And there's a lot of various responsibilities in there. We're talking about responsibility as a singular thing, and there are many different types of responsibilities as this is ongoing.
One of the teachers that I think stand out in my mind in the past that I've admired most are when they reach a point in their teaching that they don't have the answer and they are not egotistical so much as to pretend they do. You know, to reach that point of saying, well, I don't know the answer to your question, but let's research it out, or let me find out and I'll get back to you, or whatever, instead of just sort of bluffing their way through or pretending that they're an authority on something.
And again,
they really don't know that.
The problems arise through those most subtle degrees of ego. I'm afraid that a majority of the people that I know, the vast majority of the people, have very subtle degrees of ego, which I am guilty of. I mean, I have seen many of my own. Some of those things were addressed in the last 48 hours with my son Todd and the rest of my family. And I thought, wow, that is me. So this is something that everybody has. And it's a sad state of affairs when the individual decides, well, I should pacify my student. When the truth is, they don't know the answer to the question. To be ignorant is there's nothing wrong with ignorance at all. I mean, it's not even my opinion. It's a spiritual fact that in the human condition especially, you can't know everything all the time. I mean, again, that would be pure love, that would be pure light, you would spontaneously combust. But in fact, bear with me if I brag, I'm proud of myself for answering very bluntly a lot of times, I am probably one of the most ignorant people on that subject. Astrology, for one. In other words, the mechanics of astrology. I'm very ignorant on that subject. And yet I enjoy and listen to people asking questions of that. And of course, right away, I try to respond and answer correctly. So I can participate in it, but I first qualify myself as saying, I'm very ignorant of that subject. And then again, try. See, I qualified, or you should qualify where you're coming from and how intensively adept are you in this particular subject, or notice, how are you answering this? Are you answering this from you, the intellectual, philosophical, spiritually educated you, or are you speaking intuitively / spiritually? In other words, do I consider myself a spiritual being? Yes. Do I answer things spontaneously spiritually? Yes, I do. I mean, I've done that a lot, and I'm anticipating doing that more. Yeah.
Are you aware, Tom, when you're talking
sometimes
you're human Tom Sawyer, or when you sort of clicked into
right, you might have to ask that question again, because let me answer it this way. The minute you said the second word of that statement, because I don't even know if it's a question right now or a statement, I knew exactly what you were asking, and I kind of started to smile because, see, the smile is my way of covering up my impatience, if you haven't noticed that.
Yeah.
And I want to just interrupt you and tell you, what's the sense of having me listen to the whole long drawn-out question when I can just make you as happy as I can be by just saying sometimes and then answer it more properly. And I've conditioned, I'm not good at it yet, I've conditioned myself to wait and be patient and already know the answer to the question even though you haven't asked it. Well, now is that me being psychic or intuitive? No, because we're in a flowing conversation and everybody does that to a degree or another. And it's difficult for me to be quiet enough and wait and then 1, 2, 3, sometimes answer that and then go on with the long version of the answer. Even for me, do not just go right off on a tangent and give the 10-minute answer. I've conditioned myself and learned to say, well, let me answer you first, yes or no. Or let me say, well, it's a yes or no answer, and let me give you both sides, then I'll tell you the long version of the paradox. All right, now repeat the question if you can.
Okay. Are you aware of the times when you're speaking as Tom Sawyer, the human being, and when you're
All right. See, I want to interrupt now. And sometimes in that, there are, I can't even give percentages, but let me guess at percentages. 30% of the time where I'm talking in a subject and then actual spiritual, intuitive information flashes into me or comes into me, and the words flow perfectly, and some people have claimed that they can hear that in my voice. In other words, that they hear either I slow down and very slowly and say words like efficacy and things like that, or I'll speed up and just rattle off this information, and then I might even say, wow, that was interesting.
As if you were hearing it for the first time.
Right. And there's truths to that. In other words, that is spiritual intuition or spiritual knowledge. It is not in my intellect. It's not really in my brain per se. It's not in my intellect. I haven't learned it out of books. It's maybe come for the very first time into my realization, my conscious level, and that comes out that way. I'm guessing at a number of, let's say, for the lack of a better number, 30% of the time. Times that situations like that happen. Other times, and one example that I'm thinking of right away was in Albany at an official lecture, was to be a 1-hour lecture, was a 3.5-hour lecture. It was a beautiful situation where I became intuitively aware of a suicide scenario in the audience. I was never during that time aware of the third, rather identical suicide scenario in the audience. I started with a singular realization. With my physical eyes, I saw the individual and became aware of his situation. So seeing that, and with the way the conversation was flowing, there was a question regarding that. And as I was scanning the audience with my physical eyes, I saw this individual. Now, I should say, of course, I continued to scan. I didn't stop and stare. And as I answered the question, I did not look and talk directly to that individual. I mean, that's politeness, if nothing else. But then with his realization, Tom Sawyer, was talking to that man. So it was more comfortable for me. I was answering his situation. As that developed within a minute, less than a minute in time, and I talked for probably 20, 25 minutes answering that situation. Within a minute of that time, I became intuitively aware that there was another man, by the way, it doesn't matter male or female, but another person in the audience with a rather identical situation. After that lecture was over and we sort of convened to the parking lot where we talked for another half hour, a third couple came directly over to me and with accolades, and I was thank you so much, and we knew that you were talking only to us. Well, right away I said, well, I appreciate what you're telling me, but I was not talking only to you.
Yeah.
And then I did explain that. As a matter of fact, I will share with just this smaller group that there were two other individuals who I was addressing intimately and personally. Although I know that when I do this, not only will the whole audience appreciate and understand what I'm talking about, but those individuals who are in the audience, that becomes so absolutely intimate and personal, again, / spiritual, that they will receive that in that way. So that example says that I was initially intuitively aware of one individual. Within a sentence or two, became aware that there was another in the audience of about 350. And then not at all during that talk was I accomplishing, and I say I, what was I accomplishing, or were we accomplishing the effect, the effectiveness of that personalized, intimate, and spiritual talk for another intensive individual, as well as the entire 350 audience at large.
While we're on that subject, I know we haven't covered this before, but it's been so helpful for me. You have personally helped me in two situations where...
Be careful, we're on tape.
I know. Where I was helping someone who was trying to stop someone from committing suicide. And I quoted directly what you suggested that I say to a person that's contemplating suicide. And I think it would be really good on tape, because the person that was helping, their instinct was to not stress the person out anymore by saying anything negative, but they wanted to say, I'm with you unconditionally, I love you unconditionally, whatever you decide to do, I'll still love you. And I know what you told me to say was a much harder line than that. I would never understand. Can you tell me, or tell our audience, if you're confronted with someone who's seriously contemplating suicide, what you would suggest, basically?
Well, okay. Well, all right. And for right now, I'm a little bit caught off guard. I know as I'm thinking, I'm still stuck on the research organization.
Okay.
I'm
one of the situations was a teenager that had already tried once, and the other one was a call I had gotten that someone in the Midwest may have already tried suicide, and her best friend called me. And you had told me that you would say, I'll never understand. The pain will be much greater if you take the steps, and anything that we could deal with if you stayed here in the body and you worked on whatever it is that's so tolerable. That you just don't give them any sense that the step of suicide is acceptable.
Yeah, is an option. Or will alleviate any of their real problems.
Right.
Right.
Or that they'll avoid.
The understanding of that is, of course, with honesty, that you cannot understand fully anybody else's situation.
Right.
And then to tell them that you cannot understand. So often that word is just thrown out, oh, I understand.
Yeah.
And a person who is really hurting or is in a state of dis-ease is saying, do you understand? And they want the truth.
Yeah.
And they want you to say, well, I can understand a part of what you're going through. And then the best scenario is for a person to have the ability to associate a portion of their disease or dis-ease with something in their personal life. You can say, well, it's funny you should ask me that, because I was so distraught one time, I thought of attempting suicide. And I found that it worked out for me. And it was, again, a direct association.
Yeah.
But in your case, this wasn't so, and it's still most important for you to say sentences, number one, that will not indicate that it is ever, ever, ever okay to do a suicide, to commit suicide, to accomplish a suicide. That, number two, it will absolutely positively not solve anything. It will not make the family better off. It will not alleviate the person who is attempting suicide or considering it. It will not make that person better off, or it will not alleviate them the pain and suffering that they're obviously going through. if it be psychological or physical or whatever, the excuses or the desire to escape from that which they're desiring to escape from, they will not escape from that. That is not an answer. They're the two most important things. Along with, there is a way out of this. That if you allow yourself some time with effort, that it is answerable. That things will get better. I mean, say will, don't say can. I mean, be more specific. They will get better. And that you will love this person. That you do love them at the moment. They might be being obnoxious. You might be extremely uncomfortable. You might be wishing you were anywhere else but in that confrontation with what you are dealing with. Confronted by a person who is contemplating or attempting suicide. But you tell them that you care. You can tell them that this is upsetting to me to hear about this, but I want to tell you that I care, and I want you to be better off. And because I want you to be better off, minimize the logical deductive reasoning, because it started to sound like logical deductive reasoning. And usually, can I say usually? Yes. Usually, that a person in a suicide state or contemplating suicide has had enough of logical deductive reasoning, because for most people that use logical deductive reasoning, they've already got to their own personal therefore.
Right.
And therefore, their only answer is to stop, to die, to stop this, to cease this state of disease or disease. And that they can't tolerate this anymore, they have to do anything to get away from this.
Right.
And this is what is on their mind. And they have already come to the realization that therefore, there are no other options. So you might wish to give a very simplistic, I'm emphasizing simplistic option. Be careful as to what you predict or say. Should you tell them that in 2 weeks they will be better, you can say that tomorrow will be better. But don't say cured.
Right.
And again, don't lie.
Right.
But give them some hope. Tell them that you care, that you love them. And if you say the word to a complete stranger, so to speak, because some people are still hung up in telling a complete stranger, and I mean, look right at them and say, I love you.
Yeah.
And mean it.
Yeah.
See, be careful about role play, because again, honesty is important. Or that you're not sure. In other words, are you really comfortable in using that sentence, I love you? I mean, if this jerk, I'm not calling anybody who's contemplating suicide a jerk, but in your mind's eye, right then at that moment, you have this guy who is ugly, who is overweight or too skinny or anything like that, and you're not enjoying his physical appearance. How much can you say at a moment's notice, I love you?
Right.
You might be actually hung up on the disgusting appearance of this individual, or the disgusting odor of this individual, or this disgusting religion or philosophical view. These are all biases and prejudices of ours. But again, I'm using that as an example because say things either simplistically or ambiguously so you don't have to corner yourself into a lie.
Right. It makes me think of the Native American belief that if you save a life, then you're responsible for it for the rest of your life. Does it go through your mind that if you're, if this person says, okay, I won't commit suicide, what next? That it's your responsibility to help them with that next step and that next step.
That's something that anybody who hears that sentence right now and it rings a little bell, you should really delve into that. The American culture, the American Indian culture, and that I like that. That's not bad, that's good. And possibly in a little more intimate discussion than a videotape, I could even address to a small group of people as opposed to a large group of people some of the spiritual implications that I know about regarding future responsibilities of that scenario where if you have saved a person's life from In other words, it was assured that this person would have died, passed on, we'll say, if it be from a suicide or from an accident.
Right.
And if you share, love, heal, manipulate, or do, and prevent, I'll use that word, prevent or save, you can look at it two different ways, prevent or save a person from passing on. There are spiritual implications that go into the future. I don't want to really get into this right now. It's a very, very intellectual or intensive subject, because I would have to be very careful as to the sentences I use and what I say. But I can give examples, which I will not now.
One example that we won't get into that I know you experienced, but maybe we'll save that for another time.
Yeah, I mean, there are several that will give. If I give just the examples that I have mechanically been involved in, or physically reality. In other words, did I hold a man's head together with my hand? In other words, his skull, was it in 3 pieces on the street?
Yeah.
And did I physically put him back together and support the physical skull to the hospital, through the emergency, through the upstairs operation? And I mean, just again, covered with blood, all that mechanical stuff. Did I do that? Yes, I did. Did it work? It wasn't supposed to, in spite of my efforts. And God bless all the situation. It worked. Are there any spiritual connectednesses or future scenarios or implications of my relationship, my spiritual relationship with that particular person? And the answer is yes, there is. But don't worry about that. I mean, don't worry about that. That's not as big a deal as many people will attach themselves to or think of. In other words, God forbid anybody should hesitate saving a person's life because they would think in terms of, wait a minute, I don't want to take any responsibility for their future or for my future in relationship with this individual. And that would be terrible.
Right.
So, but there are implications. There is a degree of reality to that.
But no one comes into, well, I'm asking this, I'm not saying, no one comes into their incarnation with a pre-planned suicide.
Oh, hold on. Like, I wasn't following you. I'm glad you said that. I thought you were going to say nobody comes into an incarnation with, for the purpose of, not the sole purpose, the only purpose of saving another person's life.
Yeah, that I can see. That would be
okay.
fun.
Right, but you mean come into this incarnation for the purpose of attempting or accomplishing a suicide as their karma? I can say publicly no, that is not fair, that is not accurate, because it's dealing with the fundamental, simplistic, positive, negative, good and evil thing. It is in the order of evil, bad, negative, sad, not progressive, all of those words and phrases to even think in terms and or accomplish a suicide in your life or in anybody's life. It is a good, glad, and wonderful thing to overcome. I mean, God forbid any of us should get into a situation or whatever where we contemplate suicide. To overcome that is a very great accomplishment. I mean, God bless anybody who has been psychologically stressed, physically in a state of disease or have a disease and so on, and seriously consider suicide and overcome that dilemma. That is a very great accomplishment. That's better than becoming financially rich, because to become spiritually rich in something like that has much greater long-term value, much greater, needless to say. Something brief?
Yeah, just we guess we could probably
sign language. We're almost out of tape.
Yeah, well, we just need to take a break. I guess we can back.
Namaste.
Well, after that wonderful cup of tea and great
4 sandwiches,
angel cake from your angel Elaine, we're back again. And our next subject is about loving relationships.
I had one once. Yes.
Okay. In the work that we do, where we're all out talking about and trying to promote loving relationships between people, I think a lot of us run into having deep, loving relationships with many people. And I think maybe you could address keeping a balance in your life if you have a family, a spouse, or when you have more than one loving relationship.
Yeah, one of the most difficult situations is to have a long-term relationship, if it be spousal or otherwise. And for instance, in my case, having had a near-death experience, for other people, a spontaneous spiritual awakening, or just a GSA, a gradual spiritual awakening. A few people, in fact, I dare say several people, who went to Sedona with us, have had or are having a gradual spiritual awakening. And by that I mean they were this person from high school and or college, and for the last 10 or 15 years, they have done this and that, the other thing, and they have a relationship or relationships which is ongoing. So they all fall in the same category that those of us with spouses, long-term relationships, and so on, have a situation where hello, Tad, welcome. We have new members in our audience. My son, Tad, who has come all the way from Germany, and my other son, Tim. Hi, Tim. We're talking about relationships. Lost my train of
You're
thought.
talking about the people in Sedona?
Right. And regardless of the really longevity of the relationship or even the intimacy, or in other words, the degree of the relationship, how good, how bad, that type of thing, we have relationships. And as a person goes into or on or has suddenly a spiritual way of thinking or a spiritual change of any kind, you and I change from inside, and we suddenly know things. Now we know our attitude has changed. We know there is this thing called spirituality, and that there is a spiritual this or that or the other thing. So rather instantly, with that realization, even if it's over a period of time for a gradual spiritual awakening, there is a realization that there are new needs, likes, dislikes, and a growth process, if it be suddenly or otherwise. In other words, we're not the same. Now, the problem with that it's usually in form of a problem, is that either the spouse, the friend, or the relationships, they have been ongoing. Normality, familiarity, and that which is usual, and shall I dare say the word normal, is the status quo. And then all of a sudden, this person starts talking either about God or saying, I don't wish to argue with you anymore, or changing in some ways. Well, again, as changes, abrupt changes are usually chaotic, either in themselves or the result. This is kind of what I'm hinting toward right now.
It's like you come home and you're a different person from when you left, and your spouse said,
Yeah, and I don't mean to take sides, but
yeah,
the spouse is the same person as they were 3 days ago or 3 months ago, and you aren't. Now, generally what we're talking about is a greater or a better realization. In other words, your reality has become activated with knowledge, even if it just be an attitudinal change. That's a form of knowledge of spirituality. Now, the relationship that you have with other people, there is, of course, the scenario where they are not receptive at all to anything new. They are not receptive to some of the spiritual borderline stuff, channeling, reincarnation, God. I mean, any and all of those things, and they very well be not receptive at all. Mm-hmm. And yet you're standing there knowing the reality of any and all of these subjects.